All right, so today we're really diving deep into some fascinating stuff. We're tackling the meditations, personal reflections of Marcus Aurelius.
Yeah.
And, it's not every day we get this kind of look into the mind of a Roman emperor,
Right.
someone running an empire while thinking about life's biggest questions.
It's true. And the most interesting thing is these writings, they weren't meant for anyone else. It's like we found a secret diary, personal struggles, philosophical thoughts, completely unfiltered.
Totally. And he's dealing with some heavy stuff, plagues, wars, even a rebellion led by his own general. Makes you wonder how he functioned at all.
Well, that's where the Stoic philosophy comes in. But before we get into all that, we've
Yeah.
got to understand his world. He ruled during the Pax Romana, often called a golden age.
Right? Yeah.
But like any historical period, the reality was way more complicated.
So, not all sunshine and togas then.
Not exactly. Sure, the Roman Empire was pretty peaceful and prosperous then, but under the surface, there were serious challenges.
Like what? Give us the rundown.
Okay, so imagine constant border threats, barbarian tribes always pushing, looking for weakness. And on top of that, this devastating plague ripped through the empire during Marcus's reign. Population decimated, fear everywhere. We can't overstate that impact.
Man, talk about pressure.
Then there's the coup attempt, led by Avidius Cassius, one of Marcus's most trusted general.
Oh, wow.
Betrayal, disillusionment, must have been crushing. It really shows, even in times of peace, there's always this power struggle, always someone wanting control.
Adds a whole other level to his writing, doesn't it? Facing all that externally, yet he still takes time to reflect on himself. It makes you wonder, what would his meditations tell us about his journey?
And that's where it gets really interesting with Marcus Aurelius, what makes him so relatable, even now, because, it wasn't armies or politics he turned to in private, it was philosophy.
That's right. And not just any philosophy. Stoicism. Gotta admit, I used to think Stoicism, that's just bottling up your feelings, being tough. But reading his meditations, way deeper than that.
Yeah, a lot of people misunderstand that. Stoicism isn't about ignoring emotions. It's more like how to understand them so we can live better, more fulfilling lives.
Okay, so how does that actually work in the meditations?
Right.
Got an example of him putting it into practice?
Well, there's this idea living in accordance with nature. Super important to Stoicism. One passage, Marcus compares life to a river. Always flowing, always changing. He's saying, fighting against that, it's pointless.
Huh, that's a powerful image. The river, never the same twice. Makes you think about how much we resist change, wanting things to stay the same or be different.
Exactly, and that resistance, that's where a lot of our suffering comes from. Marcus is saying by accepting how things are, that natural order, that's how we find peace, even in chaos.
So not giving up, but more like
Ah,
picking your battles. Focusing on what you can control, which is usually just how we react, not the events themselves.
exactly, which brings us to another big Stoic thing Marcus talks about, the discipline of perception.
Okay, break that down for us. What does that even mean?
It means realizing how we see things, that becomes our reality. We look at stuff through our own biases, judgments, and those interpretations, they control our feelings, not the events themselves.
So it's not what happens, it's how we think about it that really matters.
You got it. Marcus thought by examining our perceptions, questioning our assumptions, we get a clearer picture of reality, and that frees us from a lot of unnecessary suffering.
Got an example from the book about that.
There's this one, it's really striking. He talks about waking up early, wanting to stay in bed, comfy, But he reminds himself he has work to do, a purpose. So he chooses to see getting up not as a chore, but a chance to live by his values.
He's actively framing the situation, remembering his purpose to live a virtuous life.
Exactly. And we can all do that. Next time you face a problem, a setback, just pause before reacting. Ask, is this actually bad, or am I just choosing to see it that way?
Shifting perspective, right? Looking for the good, the lesson, even in the tough stuff.
Right. And that's a powerful feeling, realizing we have that choice. And that's huge in Stoicism. We might not control what happens, but we control our own minds, our actions.
Taking charge of our own story.
Yes, and this is where action comes in. For the Stoics, freedom wasn't about hiding from the world, but engaging with it, trying to make a difference.
Which is what Marcus did, right? Emperor or not, he never shirked his duties.
Exactly. And that service, doing good for others, it's all over the Meditations. He writes, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Action, not just talk.
That's why it still matters today. Not just ideas, but actual guidance for life. How to find meaning, purpose, when things feel chaotic.
Exactly. It's the power of Marcus Aurelius.
Hmm.
He reminds us that journey for wisdom, self-mastery, it's timeless. It's for all of us, no matter who we are.
Like having a chat with a wise friend, someone who's been there. By reading this, we join that conversation. But there's one more thing about this living in accordance with nature bit. There's more to this living in accordance with nature than just accepting change. It's not just about going with the flow like that river image.
Right. See, the Stoics, Marcus, too, they believed in this force running through everything. They called it the logos. It's how everything's connected, like some kind of cosmic intelligence.
Okay, now we're getting deep. So how did they think this logos thing, how did it actually work in everyday life?
Well, they thought our reason, our ability to think logically, make sense of things, that was a piece of that universal force right inside us.
So by using our brains well, we're not just being smart, we're like in sync with the universe's plan.
Exactly. And you see this all over Marcus's meditations. He's always telling himself, step back, don't just react, use your head, like he's tapping into something bigger.
Holding himself to a higher standard, but not one someone else made up. It's like it's coming from inside.
Yes. And this is where willpower comes in, that discipline. Accepting what we can't change and focusing on what we can, which for them was mostly our own minds.
And let's face it, that's the toughest part. Did Marcus ever say how to get better at that willpower stuff?
He did. One thing he was big on was negative visualization. Now, before you think that sounds too dark,
Okay, yeah, a little ominous. Explain yourself.
basically it's imagining losing the things we love. Possessions, people, even our own lives.
Whoa, okay, intense. Why would you think about that stuff?
Not to be a downer, but to be grateful for what we've got right now. When we remember things don't last forever, we appreciate them more while we have them.
Like a reset button for your brain to stop taking things for granted.
Exactly. And it also kind of prepares us because eventually we do lose things. That's just life. It doesn't take the pain away, but it's less of a shock because we've thought about it before.
That's actually really useful advice.
Yeah.
Even if it seems kind of backwards at first. It makes you think, how often do we try to avoid uncomfortable thoughts, But Marcus is saying maybe leaning into that stuff, that's where the strength comes from.
You got it. And it's that willingness to face the hard stuff inside and out that makes Marcus Aurelius so important even now. He wasn't some perfect emperor. He was a guy dealing with the same human things we all do. Doubt, fear, anger, and he found ways to handle it.
It's kind of inspiring. He's saying it's okay to not have all the answers, to mess up, to question things. Maybe that's how we grow.
And that's what's so great about the meditations. Not rules, but tools. Ways to figure out this whole being human thing.
And you know what? This whole deep dive into Marcus Aurelius, his meditations, it's given us a lot to think about. Wisdom can pop up in the strangest places, like the personal writings of some Roman emperor.
And that journey, trying to be better, live a good life, it's worth it. It makes us face our own biases, figure out why we do things, and try to be the best versions of ourselves.
And on that note, to everyone listening, as you go through your day, your week, maybe a little bit of Marcus Aurelius will stick with you. Even emperors had these same questions. What would your meditation say about your world?